Okay, welcome to the particulate particulate matter measurements that we are doing here in this project. We have already a project running that creates sensors, and in this challenge we wanted to extend this project. So, particulate matter, what is it? It's basically one part of the air pollution that we have in the cities, basically. And these air pollution contributes to adverse health effects. So we breathe in the air and also these particulate matter sources, and these can directly go into our bodies and have adverse effects here. So here's an example of China, where this is well known, that in Beijing, for example, there are many days where you can't leave the house without protecting yourself from the air pollution. What are the sources? One of the sources is traffic, so we have the cars that emit these type of particles. For example, diesel is well known for that, and sometimes you see the black clouds coming out of the cars. But it's not only the cars, it's also planes and ships that emit a lot of particles here. And last but not least, roughly a third of the pollution that we see is coming from factories and buildings. So if we use heating and burn oil or burn wood, then we create also particulate matter. What sizes are the interesting matter sizes here? You see on the left, you see a human hair, and roughly the same size are sandy particles that you might have in your hair when you leave the beach. But the particles we are talking about are even smaller. So if the human hair has 70 micrometers in diameter, then the particulate matter we are talking about is 7 times smaller. So we talk about PM10, which is 10 micrometers wide in diameter. And another size that we are interested in and which can be measured is the 2.5 micrometer size. There are ultrafine particles also which seem to be relevant, but there is not that much known about it, about the measurement, which is quite difficult, and also the health effects. So basically the regulations that we find concentrate on these sizes of particles here. So this is another image for this. You see the particles on the right in blue and red, and they are quite small. What's the distribution of these particles? We have a total particle matter below 100 micrometers, and you see here the circles for PM10 and PM2.5, which are part of this whole total particulate matter. So the air pollution is important, it is measured all over the world. So most governments and cities have stations to measure air quality, and these are, depending on the countries, a bit different measurement types and so on. But at least this is something that is more and more monitored throughout the world. You can also see a little bit the problematic areas are usually the highly developed areas are often affected by this, and the cities. So what about Stuttgart, where we are now? We have official measurement stations here, also in Stuttgart, but these are quite a few only. So there are not too many stations, and the measurement takes a while to be analyzed, let's say. So it's a gravimetric measurement. That means the particle mass is measured, and that can be done for a day. So everything is gathered over a day, and then the total mass is measured. So that's basically also what the regulations are about. So there are thresholds in the regulations for a maximum amount of particulate matter, and these are usually the total mass of particulate matter over a day. In the European Union, these pollutants have to be monitored, and also actions have to be taken if there are too many days in a year that the thresholds are exceeded. So for example, in Stuttgart now we have an alarm system, and that will tell people that there is a high chance today, for the current day, to exceed these thresholds, and that people should switch over to public transport systems and so on, or try to avoid producing too much particulate matter in that sense, or air pollutions in general. So the idea here of the citizen science project that we have is to measure the PM concentrations with a sensor network, and so create the sensors, build the sensors, also the network, store the values publicly available, and then try to create a wider distribution also of these results that we get here. So how does it look like? This is such a measurement unit. We have in the center we have a processing unit and a wireless module. This is basically a wireless module that we use as processing unit. And on the right we see such a particulate matter sensor, which is imported from China or from Japan, and usually used for air quality checks in houses, so in building systems. What we did in this weekend is add a GPS here. So on the left we have a GPS module with an antenna to be able to track, to measure tracks, and to have a mobile sensor and have the position of the measurements also. And the second idea was to map the current sensor network. So the sensor network in Stuttgart consists of quite a few sensors now. It will be more after a while. So we are working on the creation of a sensor network of 300 sensors, so that we have a good distribution all over the city in the end. But basically the idea is you have to see the values that we are measuring to see also maybe what's going on in your city. So this is the map that we created. It consists basically of a background map, which is OpenStreetMap, and on top of that we have a layer for the measurements that we have here, and this is done in hexagons, and the data is assembled for each hexagon, and the means are taken. So if we can zoom in here, you can freely zoom the map and then see the sensors. So for example, down here on the left, this will be one sensor, for example, and we have several sensors in the area of Stuttgart city itself here. And if I understood correctly, or it's already working, that if you hover the areas, then you can also see how many sensors there are, what values there are, and get the information. So, what's the relation to space here of this project? Basically, this type of network can provide ground measurements, which are related to, which can then be related to satellite-based measurements, which is basically AOD measurements, aerosol optical depth measurements, which can be done from MODIS satellites, for example, MODIS image data, such particulate matter measurements can be done optically, but these measurements are with a relatively low resolution. So if we talk about 500 meters, for example, of pixel resolution, then this will cover a huge part of the city. We want to know a bit more how this is really distributed in the city, so to have a higher resolution. So that's basically all about this project. Thank you. If there are questions.